Good afternoon. This is Wilson Shirless Jr., Prison Industrial Complex and Mass Incarceration PowerPoint for Dr. Robinson's class. What is mass incarceration? Simply put, it is a shorthand for the fact that the U.S. incarcerates more people than any nation in the world, including China. And the U.S. is also the leader in the prison population rate. America's approach to punishment often lacks a public safety rationale. Disproportionately affects minorities and inflicts overly harsh sentences. Other countries do not use prison as a one-size-fits-all solution to crime. In 2016, the Brennan Center examined convictions and sentences for the 1.46 million people behind bars nationally and found that fully 39% were in prison without any public safety reason and could have been punished in a less costly and damaging way. Now, the prison population grew in the 1970s, and Nixon started this trend declaring a war on drugs and justifying it with speeches about being tough on crime. But however, in 1980, when Reagan took office, the prison population was 329,000, and in 8 years later, when he left after his 2 terms, it raised up to 627,000, and this staggering rate was very disproportional and still remained the same today. And as for Texas, for example, the state incarcerated rate doubled in 1978, and the state incarcerated 182 people for every 100,000 residents. Now in 2003, the figure was 710. The system blame approach for mass incarceration stems from the democratic conditions that minorities face daily. It is believed and assumed that blacks and other individuals of color are targeted by the police and forced into prison without proper trials and engagement. The system blame approach will mostly consist of minorities blaming the government. Now, the person blame approach will consist of people blaming others for mass incarceration. For example, whites will blame blacks for being targeted and cheer on the police regardless if the interaction between the two was unlawful and it was on the account of the police. Now, mass incarceration for minorities. To keep it short, in poor and disadvantaged communities, there may well be a tipping point as to what rigorous crime policies and practices can do more harm than good. So now, to summarize this slide, if and when the cops incarcerate individuals from different communities and then bring them back to the communities after harsh prison sentences that were probably unlawful and unreasonable, those individuals who go back into the community can do more harm than good, meaning they could have mental issues that stem from prison, they could have physical issues that stem from prison, and they could lash on the other innocent community residents that lie in that area. Now, the recent decline in mass incarceration, there has been incremental progress in reducing mass incarceration. It declined about 10%, and racial disparities in the prison population has also fallen. Lawmakers from both parties have come to realize that locking up people is expensive, ineffective means to fight crime. Some conservative states like Texas have led the way, undoing many of the harsh policies passed in the 1980s and 1990s. States have seen their prison populations and crime rates decline simultaneously. Unfortunately, however, both President Trump and Attorney General Jeff Sessions are stout reform opponents, threatening the small progress that has been made. Yet, it's important to remember that even in the current state of decline, it will take decades to achieve incarceration rates appropriate to the current violent crime rate, which is roughly where it was in 1971, and where racial disparities are decreasing and the rate of incarceration for African Americans will only match whites after hundreds of years of current pace. The role of prison industrial complex. Prison industrial complex is a term we use to describe the overlapping interests of government and industry that use surveillance, policing, and imprisonment as solutions to economic, social, and political problems. Though its reach and impact, the PIC helps and maintains the authority of people who get their power through racial, economic, and other privileges. So basically, they're just saying that prison is a big business, and prison industrial complex is that big business that helps the prison profit their money, and they profit off the prisoners. So the more prisoners that enter in the jail system, it allows the prison industrial complex corporations to gain money. And this power is also maintained by earning huge profits for as I said, for private companies that deal with prisons and police forces, helping earn political gains for tough-on-crime politicians, increasing the influence of prison guard and police unions, and eliminating social and political dissent by oppressed communities that make demands for self-determination and reorganization of power in the U.S. The effects prison-industrial complex. So now, in order to make the money, corporate prisons are set up so that they need prisoners, and a lot of them. State governments sign contracts in the correctional corporations who agree to provide a certain number of prison beds and to keep those beds filled, or at least 90% of them. If they do not keep the beds filled, the states will pay for them, trying to meet those lockup quotas, or minimum numbers of filled prison beds has resulted in over 2 million people ending up in prison in the United States of 2014. China, with 5 times as many people in the U.S., had about 500,000 fewer people living in prison during the same year. In spite of the fact that violent crimes had decreased, there are more people in American prisons than ever before. American Adam Gopik, in this article, The Caging of America, said that in 1980 there are about 220 people incarcerated for every 100,000 Americans. By 2010, the number literally tripled to 731. No other country even approaches that. Now that's crazy. System person approach for prison industrial complex is simple. For this issue, including the reason for mass incarceration, stems from prisons performing like big businesses and targeting blacks and other minorities. Now, the personal approach is explained as people are their own enemy when it comes to prison performing as big businesses. They cause their own problems and we as corporations profit. The prison industrial complex on minorities. Incarcerated individuals who are most people of color are legally property of the government now. Prisoners are leased to private companies for mandatory labor. Prisoners work and live in inhumane conditions. Prisoners are paid next to nothing while corporations profit huge amounts off their labor. The system dehumanizes incarcerated individuals. The remedies: eliminate prison for lower level crimes, reduce sentence minimums and maximums currently in prison, make these changes common, reinvest savings into crime prevention policies. Prosecutors should seek lower penalties when appropriate. This is my citation page.